Well, welcome back to our final week of Fridays in the Field, wrapping up here where we began near Henderson, Nebraska. Of course, Fridays in the Field brought to you by FNBO, the Great Big Small Bank. And we're catching up here again with Matt Hiebner, and you made a liar of me again, Matt, so thanks a lot. I said we'd catch you on the combine, and apparently the weather's been so good, harvest has been good enough for you guys that you are done now. But it'll be good to kind of look back on this season and get a bit of a recap. Let's start by kind of, again, looking back on this growing season. The first time we talked to you was a few months ago.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind of a season. I mean, I don't know, from the last time we talked, we said, oh, we'll be harvesting the next time we got here, and we caught a 1.5 inch, 2 inch rain, and nobody has really started harvesting before that. And right after that, everybody fired up. And we went solid for 3-4 weeks, and now everybody's done. It's pretty crazy. It's just, I mean, everybody was tired and looked like they hadn't slept, but I think overall it was a good harvest around here, and yields were better than last year. Not as good as what was that, 2018, but still. Respectable yields, especially with wind damage that everybody had in early July, I believe.
Yeah, that wind damage definitely impacting producers across this region. Let's just look back just a little bit on this season. You mentioned the wind damage, maybe some other significant things that stood out to you.
Yeah, well, I guess earlier in the season we had talked about a project I was working on with intercropping. Or not intercropping, well, yes, intercropping. Get the terminology messed up every once in a while. And so we recap a little bit on that. We went in and planted the corn, and then about a week later we came back and we planted soybeans, and they both took off pretty well and got going. And just throughout the year it was looking rather impressive, and couldn't really spot any major differences between the two. Some of the nitrate tests that we did, we thought that there was a little bit better nitrogen availability where the soybeans were, and throughout the season, so we thought, hey, well, maybe we'll see a little bit of a yield bump through there. Got in there with the combine, and that's not what we saw. It was probably, I haven't looked at it real close, but I would say 5 to 10% yield drag where the beans were versus where the corn was. We're attributing that partially, or a lot of that this year, in part to because it was so dry, and that field was on a drip tape farm, and we had a hard time getting the water to soak up to the top, and so we think the top 6 to 8 inches just really dried out, which is where a lot of the nutrients that your plant's taking up are, and because there was no water there, that the plant just wasn't able to utilize a lot of that. And so I think going forward, if we just know that and plan to keep it a little bit wetter, we did like a lot of the plant health and just the variety and disease and insect pressure that we didn't see in those strips. So.
Definitely some pros or cons, and I don't think I've met a farmer yet who is going through harvest, certainly wrapped up with harvest, who isn't thinking about the next year already. Taking that into consideration and just this past year in general, what sort of things are you thinking about for next year?
Yeah, so I think we're going to try and do the corn with the beans planted in between the rows again next year. Also probably going to go out and plant some rye and try and plant soybeans into that rye as it's still standing and growing, and then either roller crimp it down or go in there and spray Roundup. We'd really like to build a roller crimper that we could run in between the soybean rows on 30-inch rows to roll down that rye to give us a little bit of a weed blanket. We have a couple fields that have higher weed pressure with Palmer, and so we think that that could really help our chances of keeping that out of the field throughout the year.
All right, well, good luck, and I'm glad to see you wrapped up with harvest. That is going to do it for our final episode here of Fridays in the Field. Thanks so much for following along all season long. Fridays in the Field again brought to you by FNBO, the Great Big Small Bank.